There are ways, however, in which consulting can hurt you as an entrepreneur. And I'm going to go through 3 of them. But first, I want to introduce you to Dave McClure. He is an entrepreneur turned venture capitalist. He heads up an incubator out in Silicon Valley called 500 Startups. And his philosophy is that a startup, a successful one, needs 3 people at its core. It needs a hacker, it needs a hustler, and it needs a designer. And by hacker, he means an engineer, someone who can actually build and hack the product together. By hustler, he means someone who can go out and sell it. And by designer, he means someone who can, present it and make it look pretty. And so that begs the question, as a consultant, which of these 3 are you? And are you any of them? I think with a business degree, with a background in consulting, you might call yourself a hustler because you're the business person, but can you really hustle? Is PowerPoint really designing? And few of us come out of consulting with enough engineering skills to be the hacker. So 3 ways in which consulting, I think, hurts you as an entrepreneur. Number 1, I think, is unrealistic expectations. This is another slide from one of our very first investor presentations. And I've taken the numbers out simply because it's kind of embarrassing to share, and I'd rather not share them. But needless to say, the numbers are pretty high, pretty ambitious, and pretty unrealistic. Coming from a consulting background, and these, the founding team at eVisors, all were used to working in a corporate environment in which the resources were under our control. We had a budget, we had a team, we had a timeline, and you could think about big opportunities and how to target them because the resources were all there. One of the things we just didn't realize at a startup is that you don't have any of these resources, and getting the resources is really, really difficult. And so it's very, very easy to fall into the trap of being unrealistic with your expectations. And while that's good in the sense that maybe without unrealistic expectations, you may not have the impetus to go out and actually try it because you do need to be a little crazy. But it's bad in the sense that if you keep promising people that you're going to hit $100 million in sales in 3 years, you're going to be a $1 billion company, et cetera, and you keep failing on that promise, you lose a lot of credibility. And I think that's a big pitfall for a lot of consultants, is that they don't realize that in the real world where you have to do it all yourself and you don't have the resources, it's very easy to be unrealistic with your expectations. Number 2 is not knowing how to sell. And this is really at the core of what Dave McClure talks about when he talks about hustle. It's always be closing. And this is a screenshot I've added in the slide from the movie Glenn Carey, Glenn Ross, which today I don't think in any way represents what are best practices for selling. But it does, I think, capture the spirit of what you need to be thinking. You need to be out there selling at every single opportunity, because if you can't sell the product, then there's really no point. As a consultant, if you are on the analytical toolbox level, or if you're at the team leadership level, you're not really that much of a salesperson. The project that you're working on has already been sold, and really your job is just to deliver the end product. It's to solve the problem that the partner has sold to the client and deliver a final presentation with a solution. All the selling job has been done. So selling is really not something that consulting teaches you, and it's really not something that business school teaches you either. There is this book called What You Won't Learn at Harvard Business Schools, and one of the big takeaways of that was selling. You don't learn how to sell, and it's such an important skill. And it's certainly something that at eVisors we've had to learn the hard way. Figure out best practices, figure out tools, figure out how to sell effectively. And really, all we had to start out with was movies and images like Glenn Carey, Glenn Ross, and thinking that salespeople were these slimy, kind of conniving, cynical people. And what we've realized is that actually sales can be a pretty scientific, pretty analytical process in and of itself. But it's something we just hadn't learned, and that was a big disadvantage. The last thing that you don't really learn at at a consulting firm is this concept of being lean. I think for any startup today to be successful, you have to be lean. And just to give you guys a quick primer, if you haven't already read the books on the lean startup, and there's a lot of articles and a lot of talk on it these days, being lean is about minimizing the total time through the learning loop. And it's built on this notion by Eric Ries that the purpose of a startup is really to maximize learning, whereas the purpose of a company might be to maximize profits. At a big company, you've got your business model set, you know what you're doing, and it's really about optimizing that business model. Whereas at a startup, your business model isn't necessarily fully defined and fully evolved. And so what you need to go through is a process of evolution, of learning what your business model should be. And so what Eric Ries proposes as a framework here is to build something as quickly as possible, build a minimum viable product. So it's viable enough to go out there and maybe get some reactions from customers, but minimal enough that you can get it out really quickly. Measure the results, and then learn from those results, and take what you've learned to build a better product. And what you have to learn how to do is, if you have only enough cash to last you for 6 months, as an entrepreneur, you kind of have two choices. You can spend all those 6 months trying to build what you think is going to be the perfect product that's really going to just nail it, or you can try maybe to build one product every month. Maybe the first product you build is a minimum viable product. You are incredibly embarrassed about how it looks and how it feels, but it'll at least allow you to test your hypothesis and see whether, in fact, this is a product that people at all are willing to pay for. If you do that 6 times, I guarantee you will end up with a much better product than if you spent the entire 6 months trying to perfect it.